Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap, sometimes we like to do these sort of behind the scenes media shows a little bit where, we're both members of the media. We've been in multiple radio stations and newspapers and God knows whatever else we've been doing. But I'd like to think that you and I have a little bit of expertise when it comes to that. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the prominent NBA shows going on right now. And obviously, you can't start talking about that without the best show, in my opinion, the best sports show that there is, which is the NBA on TNT broadcast. And Charles Barkley has been talking a little bit about retirement lately. Do you believe what he's saying? Do you think he's going to call it quits sometime soon? Or is this just him just riffing?
Yeah, I think it's just him riffing. I mean, he's talked about it in the past. He's the same age I am. He's 58. So, and this is no heavy lifting for him. I mean, he sits on the panel with Kenny Smith, Ernie Johnson, Shaq. Ernie Johnson being the host is the quarterback, the point guard, sets these guys up. Charles isn't a guy who's a slave to film. I mean, he doesn't, break down necessarily that part of it. That's what Kenny Smith is there for. Charles is sensational. I think he is just so talented. And he's one of the few guys who can get away with saying things that maybe sound outlandish, or he may have takes on games he didn't even see, but he gets away with it because he's kind of like the fun uncle that we love, or the older brother that we love. He's just someone that everyone warms up to. And then the chemistry between him and Shaq is sensational. They remind me of just two brothers, who just kid each other. It's kind of like the same chemistry that you have with Peyton and Eli Manning on the Manning cast on Monday Night Football on ESPN too. So I don't think he's going anywhere soon, but look, if he decides to move on, those are big shoes to fill. Quite frankly, I don't know of anyone that could really fill them to the level that what Charles has done over the last 20 years. But at some point when he moves on, they're going to have to fill it with somebody. And I just think there's a lot of candidates that would be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I hope it doesn't happen for a long time because he constantly makes me laugh when I'm watching the show. I mean, he's hysterical.
It's great.
And his chemistry with Shaq is really good. And I think Shaq has gotten a lot better. When he started out, I thought that, they basically just plugged him in because he was a huge name and, he's a big personality, but I didn't think he was that good to start. In fact, I thought that Chris Webber was doing a really good job when he was, they kind of demoted Chris Webber. I mean, demoted, he's still making a ton of money and he's doing the broadcast and Shaq's doing the pre and post and halftime show. But Shaq's really coming to his own. The Shaq Didn't Fool segment is terrific. The production on that show is second to none. But yeah, Barkley is sort of the straw that stirs the drink. I think everybody would agree with that. And the show revolves a lot around his humor and his ability to, like you said, be that sort of fun uncle who can get away with saying things that most other people can't. So yeah, Charles Barkley is vitally important to that show. So I would hate to see him, retire. And I kind of, he likes talking. He's written a couple books too. He likes, making public appearances. I kind of have a hard time seeing him just walking away because he's just done with the job. What else is he going to do? I think he lives in the area too, right? Doesn't he live in Atlanta? And so it's not like he has to...
Phoenix, but again,
he lives in Phoenix. You're right. He does.
He lives in Phoenix, but with technology, you can do this from your home if you want. I mean, I look, one of the reasons that show still works is because they're together, right? I mean, it's still better to be together than
always
different locations. It just is. Because you just have that back and forth that's much better. It's not awkward like it can be with other mechanisms. So he's there, but he lives in Phoenix. I think he has a great life. He's still making good money doing this. And, Barkley made a lot of money as a player. I think he spent a lot of money also. I think he had, some gambling issues,
yes,
which he's talked about. So I don't think he's a guy who's sitting on a ton of money. I remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Scottie Pippen. Why is he writing a book trashing Michael Jordan? Well, Scottie Pippen's net worth is $20 million, which, to you and I, that's a lot of money. But for someone who's accomplished as much as Scottie Pippen, that's not a lot of money. I don't know what Barkley's net worth is. It's probably more than 20 million, but he doesn't have FU money like Michael Jordan or LeBron James or even Kevin Garnett, who made $350 million as a player in salaries. Like he doesn't have that type of money where he could just go golf all day.
Right.
Not that he necessarily has to work, but to live a certain lifestyle, you've still got to earn money. So I think that's why he's going to stick around for a little bit. I hope he does, because he's sensational. I mean, that is, you said it, Jet. That is by far the best sports show in terms of pregame, halftime, whatever.
In terms of entertainment value,
I mean, by far, it's the only show that feels like a radio show, right? Like everything else feels scripted, and that just feels like four guys sitting around talking. Like if you just threw them on the radio for 1 hour, it would be so entertaining, because you've got the ultimate host in Ernie Johnson, right? He understands his role. You got Kenny Smith, who is more of the cerebral guy. Like, he can break things down. He's the former point guard. Shaq is literally larger than life, and Barkley's larger than life. And it's so good. So we hope it never breaks up, and they're all fairly young guys. I mean, Barkley of the three players is the oldest. He's my age. He's 58, so he could do this for as long as he wants. So you'd hope they'd stay together. Again, after a certain period of time, it can get stale, but that's the thing I haven't noticed with them. It doesn't feel stale.
No, right? It hasn't. I mean, they've been doing it. Shaq got added 7 years ago ish.
Yeah, it's still
that it's been great for a long time. To me, as great as Barkley is, and I think he's the most entertaining person on the show, but I don't think they could replace Ernie Johnson. I'm not sure it would work with anybody else. He's so good at his job. I mean, really, really good. You talk about, I think he is one of the best jobs in sports. He may have the best job in sports, but talk about somebody who deserves that job because of, well, one, he seems like he's a tremendous person. He's just a great human being. And two, he's a tremendous talent.
Weeks ago, and I'd follow that even before, his adopted son, and just the way in his son had so many medical issues that we wouldn't have enough time to detail them, and how good a man he was throughout that. And you could just tell from all the love that he got from everybody, like people didn't even know him were, just sending their love to him and his family. So he's one of those guys in the business who's damn good at what he does while being a nice guy. You hear a lot of stories like, well, this guy's really talented, but he's an a-hole. Ernie Johnson appears to be a better guy than a professional, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah, and I think this is sort of the perspective you and I can give on it too, is that, obviously it's mostly, Charles and Shaq that are making you laugh, and you're sort of drawn to it because those personalities and you knew them as players and stuff like that. But the hardest job is what Ernie is doing. I mean, that's by far the most difficult job, because he's organizing everything as it's going on and keeping things, keeping them on time for breaks and stuff like that, on schedule, on topic. It's a really hard job. He makes it seem so easy. So that's why when Ernie wants to call it quits, that's going to be the biggest issue they run into.
Yeah, because he doesn't have a major ego. Like if you brought in a host that had a major ego to go along with Shaq and Kenny Smith and Charles, I mean, that wouldn't work. Like you couldn't have Stephen A. Smith as the host of that show. It would just be too much. Like you need someone like Ernie Johnson who understands they're here to listen to Shaq, Kenny, and Charles. They're not here to listen to me, and I'll set these guys up. He's the ultimate point guard, quarterback, facilitator, and that's exactly what you need. But if Charles moves on, there's a lot of candidates. Let me throw some names out there, and I just want to get your reaction to each of these names. I'm so impressed with JJ Redick. I think his podcast is great. He's now doing a lot with ESPN. I know that First Take has Stephen A. Smith, and they kind of have a revolving group that come in and debate with him. On Mondays, it's Michael Irvin. On Fridays, it's Tim Tebow. Kendrick Perkins, our friend, gets in there. On Tuesday, the big Swagoo will go at it with Stephen A. when it comes to football. And JJ Redick is starting to get involved. I like him a lot. Again, to replace Charles Barkley, do you need to go find a player who was as great as Charles Barkley? Because there's not a lot of those guys around.
Right.
And you can't. I think Charles Barkley is one of the 20 greatest players in the history of the sport. So, are you going to go get Magic Johnson? No. Plus he's terrible at it.
He's awful on TV. Holy crap, is he bad on TV?
Larry Bird's not doing it. I don't. Tim Duncan. I'm just throwing other great players out there that would be, comparable to Shaq in terms of how they were as players. Do you have to go there? Maybe Chris Webber, who's not Charles Barkley's a player, but I agree. I thought he did a nice job. But JJ Redick is someone I'm impressed with. To me, the perfect candidate would be Draymond Green, but he's still playing. Like,
Yeah.
so you got to
I think
little
they'll hire him the second he retires.
in a second. Either TNT or ESPN will hire him, at his retirement announcement because he's going to be sensational on TV, but he's still playing.
Here's the thing that's difficult to replace with Charles Barkley amongst, a lot of things. But to me, I look at it, he's able to be critical without seeming like a dick.
Exactly.
Because he didn't really have that reputation in the NBA. JJ Redick, I agree with you. I think his podcast is really good. He's good on ESPN. He comes across, he's a dookie, and he comes across as kind of an arrogant douche.
He does
sometimes.
Yeah, he does. Oh yeah.
Draymond Green, I don't think comes across as a the Duke sort of like that sort of douchebag, but like more so like we talked in our last podcast about dirty players. I don't know if I'd call him a dirty player, but like he just doesn't have that cachet of Charles Barkley.
No one
where he was ever
player.
No,
that's what I mean. You're not going to find someone comparable.
But where the point, I think Draymond is more mean than critical sometimes, which is fine. I have no problem with that.
Yeah. Well, Barkley's carves out again the crazy old uncle that we love.
Like he's a one of one. That's the thing. So if you're just looking for a straight up plug-in, it's not.
Yeah.
But Green, I think, would be a great fit.
He would be, but again, he's playing a couple other names. They do a podcast together, Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes. But again, they're not big enough names.
No, and they're also, theirs is very player centric to the point where they're doing a lot of like talking a lot about behind the scenes sort of dirt and ripping on a lot of the owners and coaches and stuff like that too. That wouldn't fly on TNT because they are partners with the league.
Exactly.
So that would be a little bit difficult. Also, a big part of their show is smoking pot on the show, which
right.
Charles Barkley I'm sure does has and maybe still does smoke weed on the side. Same with Shaq, same with Kenny, maybe same with Ernie. But it's just still in this country, it's not going to fly on a national broadcast.
And the thing too is what makes Charles great is he retired 20 plus years ago. So maybe you've got to find a former player who hasn't played for a while, right? Who's not connected to the league and the players. Because Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes are contemporary players. They were
but you would think that person would already be in the media at this point and be good at it, but it's that they don't exist.
So those two guys is difficult. Again, they have a popular podcast, but again, they're not Charles Barkley. I'm going to throw one woman out there, Cheryl Miller, who's outstanding on TV.
Yeah,
has cachet.
Sure.
Generally considered the greatest female player ever, at least the most famous female player ever. I think she would be fantastic. Our guy Kendrick Perkins, but the only thing is, I think Kendrick Perkins is probably too much like Shaq, right?
Yeah.
So
also,
it would be some redundancy
because
there.
He was a role player. Does that impact it too?
Sure. Yeah, because you're talking about Shaq, who's Shaq, and Kenny Smith.
Kenny was not a role player, but certainly not a star player.
No, Kenny Smith was probably as good a player as Doc Rivers was, and let me throw that name in there. If Doc decides to give up coaching, he's sensational on TV. So maybe he could bring a different perspective there. I think
Doc is fantastic on TV.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think a really good candidate again as a coach. The only problem is a guy who just gave up coaching. Is he going to criticize coaches? Probably not. They have a brotherhood.
Right.
Rex Chapman, who I think is great on Twitter, is great on his podcast.
I've never seen him on TV.
I think he did TV with TNT years ago as an analyst. He's a bright guy, opinionated. Boy, he's opinionated when it comes to politics, which I love. But again, he's kind of like JJ Redick, but he's got more flaws than JJ Redick, and he admits to his flaws. He had some issues with drug dependency, and he's talked about it. JJ Redick does have that Duke aura about him. Like he's extremely good looking, right? You just kind of look at him and go, well, this guy's got a lot going for him.
He's not likable. He's not as
likable. Shaq is just Shaq and Charles. I mean, you just want to like hug Charles, don't you? Like when you just like, hey, give me a big hug, Charles, because he's like a big teddy bear. Richard Jefferson, who I think is really good,
also comes off across as kind of a douche sometimes.
Right,
I feel like though.
Here's one. Now we're talking about a player who's got the cachet, almost as great a player as Charles Barkley. Some might think he's a better player than Charles Barkley. Kevin Garnett.
I think Kevin Garnett's fantastic. Every time I see him on TV, he was just on Kimmel. I watched the whole interview the other night. Really good, really natural. he's done his own segments for TNT. I think he'd be really good. He's not a little, he's intense. So I don't know that he would feel comfortable sitting and analyzing ever. Like he's just kind of, when he was hurt with the Celtics, he would sit in the locker room to watch games because he couldn't be on the bench because he couldn't control himself.
Yeah, no, he is intense.
I don't know. I think he would be good at it. And I mean, he's now forayed into acting a little bit too. He did a movie with Adam Sandler. And so clearly has a presence on screen. It would just, I don't know that he would want to do it. And he seems like he has other business interests too.
Yeah, he's got business interests. He's doing some acting. He can do whatever he wants. He doesn't need the job. Like how much has Garnett made in his career? $300+ million.
A ton of money.
And from what I understand, pretty smart with his money, right? So it's not like Kevin Garnett needs to work. So that's, like Peyton Manning, I think would be by far the best analyst on national TV. Like he blows away Tony Romo. Like I watched the Manning cast to listen to both Eli, who I think is really improved, but more so for Peyton. He's by far the best analyst in football, but he doesn't need it. Like he doesn't need to travel to Denver for a Monday night game and then the next week go to Minnesota. Like he does this from his house while he's eating a roast beef sandwich. They don't need it, right? So the same thing with Garnett. If Garnett wants to stay home and wear sweatpants and chill out and watch a movie on a certain night, that's what he wants to do, and he doesn't really have to answer to anyone. Rather than you've got to fly into Atlanta and sit on set with Shaq and Kenny and Ernie, and you got to be there. And again, you could do these things remotely, but the beauty of that show is they're all together. They've got segments where Kenny and Shaq run up to the board, and that makes that show the best, is that they're actually together. So I think Garnett would be great, but does he really want to?
And also, like Shaq, they're like kind of all, like you said, they're all brothers. They're playful with each other. And I know Garnett is close with those guys and friendly with them, but I don't know that he would describe him as like jovial.
No, he's extremely intense. Yeah, he's one of the most intense guys you'll ever see. Yeah, so I mean, that's going to be a tough role to fill if Charles decides to move on.
I will say this, Sap. This is obviously my.
You know what they could do, Jet? They could just have rotating guys in there and see what works. Maybe even
have
have
a couple people who've rotated in who have been good. Dwayne Wade, I think, was fine when he's rotated in. I mean, not amazing, but certainly better than plenty of people who are on. I think Candace Parker did a really good job when she was on the show too. She's obviously still playing. Just won a WNBA championship, but she could be somebody who eventually fills in. I do think there's so much respect between men and women who play basketball that it's a seamless sort of thing. And, she knows the NBA just as well as somebody who played in the NBA. So I think that could be a potential fit as well. And Sap, my biased Celtics perspective, I listened to Paul Pierce do the color commentary on the Celtics broadcast against the Lakers in the second quarter, I think it was. He was fantastic. He did a great job. Much better at that than he was when he was on ESPN.
Yeah, I think ESPN is difficult because I don't think they let the guy. Now, of all the sports, basketball is the most likely to let the players be who they want to be. Like we see that on TNT. With football, it's completely different. Like you could not possibly criticize, Roger Goodell or anything about the league. I mean, Bill Simmons lost his gig at ESPN because he called, Roger Goodell a liar.
Right.
But with the NBA, they let the guys be who they want to be, whether it's, Kendrick Perkins on ESPN or whatever. Guys can say things, and that's what we love about it, right? Because they're authentic. So yeah, maybe Pierce is better in that role, or maybe if he goes to TNT and he's with Shaq and he's with Kenny. And here's the thing: when Paul Pierce was on ESPN, he was clearly the best player on the panel, right? I mean, it was either him, Jalen Rose, Chauncey Billups was on there. He was clearly the best player.
Clearly, yeah.
Now, when you go to TNT, you're no longer clearly the best player. That's Shaq. So maybe that would make him feel more comfortable in that sense and like respect. You're going to respect the hell out of Shaq because he's Shaq. And I think everybody in the league respects the hell out of Kenny Smith, right? I mean, it's like Kenny Smith to me is like the kind of like an intellectual. I mean, he's just such a smart guy that people.
ESPN is not an easy place to work. They're very buttoned up. Corporate. they're owned by
they?
Disney,
Yeah,
so you got to be there.
right.
You've got to be extremely careful about everything you said. They
Yeah.
also have a million partners. TNT, they're partners with the NBA, and that's it. That's
Not
who they're
NHL.
beholden to.
Now they're with the
Oh yeah,
NHL.
you're right. Now the NHL. Although
They
I
have-
doubt that they'll ever veer into much hockey talk on that show.
no, that's what, well, I kind of wanted to see Barkley do the hockey show because why the hell not?
Maybe he will at some point.
Maybe he'll get away from basketball and go to hockey. I mean, Wayne Gretzky's horrible. I mean, again, oftentimes great players are not good at this. Joe Montana was the worst. Joe Montana was the worst analyst I think I ever heard, followed by Magic. Magic Johnson was just terrible.
Horrible at it.
But then there are some great players that are really great analysts. I think
Everybody was just assuming Magic would be good at it because he's got such a great personality, but they're not the same thing.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I think Troy Aikman's sensational. I think he's the best.
I agree. Very
analyst.
Underrated.
Yeah, he's not afraid to criticize, and he's got the cachet of the 3 Super Bowls, and he kind of gives off the aura of being like a senator. I mean, you look at Troy Aikman and go, this guy probably could have run for the Senate, whereas Tony Romo reminds me of a crazy guy who could have run for the House. Right. The Senate is very elegant, and the House is made up of crazy people, and Tony Romo to me is crazy. So yeah, it's going to be a tough role to fill, and let's hope they don't have to fill it for many years to come.
Yeah, I mean, I love the show as it is. I don't think they need any additions or subtractions. So I hope that's the case. And in terms of sports shows, I feel like it's by far the best. In terms of basketball shows, it's not even comparable. Oh. I don't even really watch any of the ESPN pre or post game stuff.
What do you think of NBA Countdown, which has now been rebranded with big personalities or big names at ESPN? I think it's kind of in a transition period right now until they find out what they want to do with this.
Again, it's like it's hard
to be the host, but now she's at NBC, and they just haven't been able to do it. I think when in doubt, they just picked their 2 biggest names and put them on the show, and that's Mike Greenberg and Stephen A. Smith. Those are their high-paid employees.
Or Will Bond, right?
Will Bond's right there.
Will Bond does the show too, right? He's on that show.
Yeah, and then they'll put in Jalen Rose or Kendrick Perkins or one of the ex-players. Greenberg's a really good facilitator. The only thing I don't like about the show is we get enough of Stephen A. Smith, right? I mean, we say Stephen A. Smith. I think I wake up in the morning to Stephen A. Smith, and I like him. Although there are times where he's full of shit. But then again, we all are. Greenberg does a really good job with Get Up, which is on from 8 to 10. So like the nights he's doing the NBA Countdown, he doesn't do that show. So it kind of weakens that show, and they put him on NBA Countdown, which I think is kind of a net negative for both shows. And he just doesn't seem to fit in with Stephen A. Smith. Again, maybe it's a personality thing where we're the 2 big dogs of ESPN and we're on this show together. That maybe doesn't always work. And Will Bond, he's kind of the old guy who can talk about the history of the league, and he's very good at what he does. And then you bring in a current player, but it just doesn't have the chemistry, obviously, the TNT show, but it's new.
Right.
So I don't know what they're going to try to do with that. That was supposed to be Maria Taylor's show, but she moved on to NBC. And who was the other female host?
Rachel Nichols.
Nichols, who I thought was very good at it, but she's gone. So we'll see what ESPN does, but they are so image conscious, but they're also worrying about dollars and cents. They're like, well, we're paying Stephen A. Smith $12 million a year. We're paying Greenberg $7 million a year. Let's get as much out of them as possible.
Yeah. And it's they're always going to be directly compared to the TNT show. So it's always going to be, a bloodbath in terms of, what's the more entertaining show. It seems like TNT show is more about like celebrating the NBA and enjoying, how fun it is, and, making fun of some of the players and all the weird things that go on in the NBA. And the NBA Countdown seems like it's almost like a news, like a NBC nightly news.
Yeah.
Like they're just going over the news of the league. It's so
you bring Woj for the latest, and it's completely different. It's like their NFL Countdown on Sundays, which I think is a pretty good show. It's 3 hours long, but it's again more buttoned up. I actually, on that show, I do like Rex Ryan. He's not afraid to criticize coaches, players. I think that's pretty good. That's what you pay the guy to do, is to have opinions, not to sit there and go, yeah, all the quarterbacks in this draft class were fantastic. He actually will talk about each quarterback and their shortcomings and whatnot. So that's what you want to have, is someone that says things. But yeah, ESPN is very, very hesitant to maybe put in big personalities, except for Get Up. I like that show because you got Ryan Clark, you got Big Swagoo, you got Kendrick Perkins coming in. You got a lot of, Bart Scott's really good, Jeff Saturday. They bring in a lot of personalities and let them be themselves. So I think the NBA Countdown show, they've got to find people who do that show because, we get enough of Greenberg and we get enough of Stephen A. Smith. We don't need more of them.
Yeah, we don't need more Magic Johnson analysis in our lives.
Yeah, Magic's not good at this stuff.
No,
Magic's not good.
It's comical.
It was a great debate today though on First Take with Stephen A. and I mentioned in a prior podcast, Stephen A. and JJ Redick talking about Stephen A. is like, well, the difference between LeBron and Michael Jordan is everybody feared Michael Jordan and no one feared LeBron. And JJ Redick's like, I played against him for 15 years. Believe me, we feared him. But Stephen A. Smith was trying to say is that Jordan was more of a psycho and he would never back down. Although again, the Detroit Pistons ragdolled him for 3 straight years, eliminating him from the playoffs and beating the hell out of him. When he finally figured that out is when he started winning championships. So people do have, selective memory loss from time to time, but yeah, NBA Countdown needs some work, but TNT show, just leave it as is. And let's hope Sir Charles stays for as long as he wants.
Yeah, ideally that's what it is, because it's basically all the ingredients you're throwing in there. It's a perfect show for what it is and what it covers. So I agree with you. I hope it stays like that for a long time. But there are some interesting guys who could step into to that Barkley role at some point if he does decide to hang it up. It just won't be the same. But that's going to do it for us, Sap, here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Sap. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody listening. Are you looking forward to the holiday?
Oh, I love Thanksgiving. A lot of good food. All my pies that I like, pumpkin pie.
Do you make anything for Thanksgiving, Sap?
Hell no. I can't get out of my own way. I usually am in charge.
You owned a restaurant. You can't
it was
cook?
A breakfast place. It was a breakfast place. I could scramble eggs, make omelets, pancakes, and that stuff, which has got nothing to do with Thanksgiving. But I'm in charge of the pies. So we get a ricotta pie, which is the Italian pie, which has got ricotta cheese. It's so good. It's my favorite. Pumpkin pie, apple, all the different pastries. That's my role going to my niece's house.
You being in charge of the pies means you walk down to the store and you buy them, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm not baking any pies. Yeah. I pick them up at I order them, pick them up at a bakery near my niece's house, which is a really nice Italian bakery. And then that's it. Yeah, I'm not baking pies. I'm not part of the Waltons.
I'd like to see that. You with a what do you call an apron on? Kiss
apron
the cook.
On, yeah. Well, remember in Seinfeld, Kramer was baking a pie.
Yeah. Well, I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving, Sap, and I hope everybody listening has a great holiday. And we will be back next week talking about all the NBA stuff that happened over the holiday and a holiday weekend. So make sure you check us out for that. Check out our social medias at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer, and you can find the podcast wherever podcasts are found. Just type in the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We're presented as always by Full Press Coverage. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody at Full Press Coverage, and we'll talk to everybody later. See you, everybody.